Roll call, please.
Looks like we have all council members present.
Seeing that all council members are present, I'd like to move on to, do I go to public comment? Or should I say there's no?
Now is when you should report that there
Yeah.
was no reportable action from closed session.
Okay, so today in closed session, we have no reportable action. Okay, and can I get an approval of the agenda order?
Motion to approve the agenda order.
Okay, the agenda has been approved. Oh, can I get a vote, please? All votes in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? See that there's no opposed.
There's one correction on the agenda.
Oh, did you pull it?
Item 6G, there's a typo in there.
Okay, do we need to pull that?
No,
Okay.
you can straight, that's the $2,500 or $25. Yeah, I saw that too.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll fix that when we get there.
Any other requests? Seeing that there's none, well, let's approve this agenda order. Agenda order. Agency reports. We could start with 3A. Please.
Mayor and City Council, Sergeant Ty Connors, Colfax Station Commander. As you can tell, I'm wearing my original outfit I wore about 9 months ago. So I'm off light duty, so I'm back to full duty now. Today is actually first day, so it's been a long haul. But I appreciate everyone's patience with my schedule and not being around as much. Real quick, I just wanted to go over, we're actually doing an annual review at work when it comes for the different stations, and I wanted to send this, kind of give you some numbers, what we ran through. Last year, basically for a full year from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, the Colfax beat, which is actually, the city limits and then a little bit of the curtilage of the city limits, we had 4,062 calls for service. Within the city limits itself, we had 2,729, and then within that county beat assignment, we had 1,330. So definitely more on the city side of it. When it came to arrests, we had 156 arrests for the year out of the city, and that's just basically out of that Charlie beat. And then we had, sorry. I'll have to look. I didn't do the comparison from last year, but I know that with the amount of, sometimes with our monthly, going over our annual average, we've been increasing that average every, quite a bit. So I think we had more arrests this year than we did last year. And then we had over 570 traffic stops within the city limits. So it's just, again, been a busy year, not overly busy, but again, the guys are doing a good job. I think within out of those 4,062 calls, and then within the city limits, the 2,700, that 1,700 of those calls were officer-initiated calls for service, and compared to the remainder was citizen-initiated calls for service. So it just goes to show that the guys are being proactive and they're going out there and being involved with the community and stuff, and just again making it safer, with being taking care of business without the calls for service for people. So other than that, we are starting our advanced officers training cycle. Started today, was our first day, so every other Wednesday is a training day for everybody, and this is to kind of get up to speed on all the post standards. Getting our domestic violence updates and different state law updates. And so that's going to be for this quarter, or for this 4-month period of our training cycle. So every other Wednesday, I'll be pretty much, depending on the type of training we do, I might be instructing, so I might not be up here. But other than that, it's a busy time for us for advanced officers training, but it's really good. We actually, the state, what the post standards are, what the requirements are is like 25 hours or so for the year, but we do well above that for the sheriff's office. So get a lot more training than most agencies. So I think that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Cal Fire, is Cal Fire here?
Well, good evening, Mayor and fellow council members, members of the audience. Brian Egan, Battalion Chief, Cal Fire, Placer County Fire, and the City of Colfax Fire Department. Happy New Year to everyone. City of Colfax Fire Department ended December on a relatively good note with both the Winterfest went off without a hitch on the fire department side of things. I think it was a good showing of our volunteers. It was a good showing in the parade, and it was a real nice fireworks show. Fortunately, the train and the weather hampered the audience from being able to enjoy the city as much as possible. The city fire department followed that up by the Santa Claus Comes to Colfax parade. I think was a huge success, bigger than last year, and received nothing but just great reviews from the community on that. So that'll be a continuing thing as long as Santa Claus wants to go for a ride on an antique fire engine. So for this year, I should say for this month, we're starting all of our annual training with our volunteers. So all of our mandatory training, our fit test and all that kind of stuff starts to come due the first part of January here. So we'll get into that training cycle. One of our volunteers is actually attended a low-angle rescue class the last 3 days, hosted down in our Auburn headquarters. So that's one of the benefits through the fire protection agreement is all of our volunteers can attend any training that is calendared for that year through our training bureau free of charge. That's part of our fire protection agreement. So one of our members has been down there. Stats for 2019, I'm going to send out through email a more detailed report on this because there's just a lot of numbers based on different call types. But for 2018, the city of Colfax was dispatched 706 times. For 2019, the city of Colfax was dispatched 650 times. So there's a reduction of 56 calls. And I'll talk a little bit about where we kind of ended the year and why I think we're down a little bit on numbers. In 2018, there were 317 emergencies inside the city of Colfax. In 2019, there were 325 emergencies within the city of Colfax. So we went up slightly there. Our Colfax Cal Fire Station 30 in 2018 responded to 921 dispatches, and in 2018, 921, and in 2019, 953. So they went up. The last 2 months of the year, so for the most part, all of November, or the larger portion of November and December, call volume-wise, almost in the entire county, we were down considerably. The Colfax Cal Fire Station, on average, runs about 3 calls a day. Summertime, it's a little bit more. Wintertime, it's a little bit less. But you could almost guarantee 3 runs a day out of Colfax Station. There were days and days and days where we didn't turn a wheel through both November and December, which is a great thing. It means people aren't having emergencies. But I think that's a reflection of the call volume for the city being off the 56 calls. And you start adding that up over the course of almost 60 full days, that'll take a hit. The reason the Colfax Cal Fire Station numbers went up is early in 2019, we revised some of our countywide response plans that added additional responses to the Colfax Cal Fire Station that they were normally not being dispatched to. So an example of that is right now, anytime we have a vehicle accident on the Interstate 80 corridor, we get 2 paid engines. And so this time of the year, it would be 1 Colfax, 1 Alta engine. Before we revised those response plans, there would only be 1 paid engine. So by the nature of the area that Alta station serves versus the Colfax station, they run a lot more vehicle accidents. Well, by adding the 2nd paid engine to Alta's responses for vehicle accidents, that station's numbers have gone up. So, and I think I'll see the same thing when I run the Alta station numbers. So, but like I said, I'll provide a little bit more detailed and more of a breakdown specifically in the different call types, because I'm curious to see where we wound up. The other thing that, that we did not have this year, and knock on wood, we really didn't have any vegetation fires within not only the city, but in the battalion. So we were off numbers in that respect also. So a little bit globally, both the North Fork American River Shaded Fuel Break and Mount Howell, we've started our burn window. So here, actually starting today, you're going to see plumes of smoke coming out of both those projects, and we're right now just burning piles that have been built over the last several months in the areas where we couldn't chip or we couldn't masticate, and where we want to use fire to get rid of the materials versus just changing it into a different type of fuel. We're actually getting rid of it. So we'll be working on that. And with that, we'll be meeting in a week on our pre-incident plan for the greater Colfax area. So we're moving forward, still working on that. That's a work in progress, and that involves all of our fire and law cooperators along with the county OES in building that template moving forward for the rest of the county. So with that, if there's no questions, be into the report. Oh, yes, sir. I just got a copy of the draft from the city attorney day before yesterday, and I'm looking at it now. And other than just a couple little edits so far that I've found, and we're moving forward with that, the goal is to have that. If there's any one critical thing that we can accomplish, in this winter spring cycle, it's getting that ordinance adopted so that the homeowners and the business owners in the community can start seeing what they're going to need to do. And honestly, also the city, and it's one of the things that's on my list to meet with Wes and Chris and review the city properties that we haven't already done fuels reduction on, look at scheduling and coordinating some operations between our Colfax CAL FIRE engines and a crew I want the city properties to be the example of what our homeowners and our business owners' properties need to look like within the city limits. So I'd be getting together and finding out what we need to do, what pieces are left to do that we'll be working on. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any grant funding available for our elder or for disadvantaged people, or how does that part work in the ordinance? Because if the owner is responsible and that owner is on a fixed income, how are they going to do the repairs? I'm not the repairs, I'm sorry. How are they going to do
fuels treatment?
The clearance?
So there's no grant funding available. It would have to come through the city. There are a very select few number of groups within communities that will come and help do particular work. It's the same thing outside of the city that's in the state responsibility land. Landowners, property owners are responsible for their property.
Okay, so there's no money in the county as well, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what do we need? Do we need boots on the ground to get in there and help these people?
Well, that would be something that would be outside the vegetation ordinance. If there was something that the city wanted to be able to provide a service to homeowners that I would expect that you'd want them to meet a certain criteria requiring that help,
Yes.
or you'd have the entire city ask for help.
Yes, no, they have to meet the guidelines.
Exactly. That would be something that would be outside of this ordinance that the city could come up with.
So if I have a plan in my mind of how to get that done with people that could come in and help, can those people how would that work? Would we train them, or would they just come in and do the clearance? Is there not much to it?
Yeah, it's basic fuel reduction that you would see done on your property. It's nothing, there wouldn't be any specialized equipment or anything. I mean, there's nothing under the ordinance that requires, I don't care if you use a garden hoe or a masticator, it doesn't matter. It's removing of the fuel. So whatever the group would have at their disposal that they would want to train their people on would So the ordinance itself doesn't outline how a homeowner would go about it. The ordinance tells the owners, this is what the expectation is, given a set of circumstances. And then anything above and beyond that would then be on the homeowner to figure that out. Now, if the city wanted to come up with some kind of a plan or create something that then would be outside of this ordinance that would be a resource available,
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, well, I have them already,
Okay.
so I pretty much put them in place in 2017. Didn't come up with the idea till I went and watched the choir, and it was like, they've done $1.1 million worth of work just for local people
Good.
here in Colfax, so
Sounds
why
like
not utilize them for some of these people that can't meet
Yep.
our standards? Because I don't want to punish anybody because they don't have the resources to,
Right.
you know, because I'm sure if they had the resources, it would be done.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I think that, if it's something that the city would want to, and I don't know what this group is, but I would assume that, if you had some form of a flyer that could be given to, and you'd have to come up with some kind of a criteria, or like I said, you'd have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
entire town
Yeah,
want to
no,
sign up
we'll
for it.
figure that part out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
But no, the ordinance itself does not discuss grant funding or anything like that. It's simply, this is what the expectation is. These are the scenarios that you may find yourself in, and then there's the secondary piece of that is then what the city is going to do to enforce it. So, Mayor, did you have another question? No? Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Yeah, so. Mayor, I'm sorry, Joe, Mayor. It's your first meeting, right? See? All right. Oh, yes? You will once it's adopted. So right now, it's purely in the draft form, and we're going through the editing process. The council will have to vote on it. There will be a workshop. We're looking at a date for a workshop to review that ordinance so that the community can come in. And then the ultimate goal is, although there's an enforcement piece to this, the ultimate goal is to educate the community of this is what each community member needs to do to provide a defensible space for their home. So it's more based on the education and how we can get there than it is holding someone financially responsible for doing their job or doing what's expected of them. So at some point in time, yeah, there's going to be, I'm guarantee it, because there is on the state side of it, people that are not going to want, regardless of whether they have the means or not, they're just not going to want to do anything. And then within the ordinance, there'll be a set of guidelines on how to get that. So.
Guidelines over and above what the city is already requiring?
No, it is, without sidetracking the whole meeting, they basically mirror and or clean up the state requirements outside the city. So. All right.
And there will be at least 2 public meetings where the ordinance is introduced and heard before it's adopted.
Thanks.
Thank you. CHP, please. Do we have anybody representing the CHP tonight? We hear from CHP? Okay. Event liaison.
You don't see Fred here either.
Okay,
Brandon and Randy are still traveling.
okay. Colfax Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor and council members. Tim Ryan with the Colfax Chamber of Commerce. So we are finishing up everything from Winterfest. Everything on the whole went very well. The weather did play a part in our event. Some of the vendors did have to, were not able to make it because of weather or did not make it. But the performances that we had, the activities we had, Santa Claus, the parade, and the fireworks all went very, very well. No real issues. We had a lot of good comments from our vendors and attendees, especially on safety-wise, to have the sheriff department kind of look like the movie of Tombstone and Wyatt Earp and his gang walking down the middle of our city. But they definitely provided a lot of security and ease for our members and vendors. And then also we did have the explorers out for traffic control, and that helped out tremendously. So all in all, it worked out to be a very good event. Moving forward, February 5th, we will start up our coffee and conversation meetings again. That's 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, February 5th. We did skip on January. It would have been on the first New Year's Day, so we passed on that. Our next mixer, we are planning to have that in March. The date and the business is still yet to be determined on that. We have a meeting in March, and that is our membership meeting and luncheon. And it's being planned to be at the VFW Hall, and it's being planned to be catered by Paul Raj and his family with their Indian cuisine. So it should be a very good event. At that meeting, we will have our nominations and elections of chamber directors, and also nominations for Volunteer of the Year, which are being compiled at this point, and we are still receiving some. The award will be presented at that luncheon. Some of our past recipients have been Kim Douglas, Foxy McCleary, and Dr. Fox. So anybody who has any suggestions and would like somebody to be nominated, please let us know at the Chamber of Commerce. We'd be glad to hear it and put the names in. And then also, we're continuing our work with the city with their branding, with your branding, for Colfax, and yeah, continuing on. So that's about it. Thank you very much.
Mayor, could we have a round of applause for Winterfest?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Tim. Sierra Vista Community Center, please.
Do you want to do this now, Connie, or later? I'm on the agenda later. Oh, okay. At the Community Center Sierra Vista, we're looking for more members. We have $420,000 that we need help on how to direct it, what to do with that revenue. So please join the board, and then you can help give us advice and directions on how best to spend some of that $420,000. I say that so people's ears perk up, and they might want to join. And then we have a crab feed this Saturday, so 5:30.
Yeah, and we have the flea market is.
Yeah, on the flea market, Saturday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Mayor, may I do a little report for the Colfax Cemetery?
Oh, absolutely. Please come forward.
It's actually not a report, it's an invitation. First of all, though, before I do that, I would like to thank the city staff for the historical research that I've been doing, and all of their help has been A1. Secondly, we have coming on the 22nd, which is your next meeting at 6 o'clock. In the afternoon before that meeting, we're having a presentation by 2 Eagle Scouts who are going to do a project out at the cemetery, and it's going to be a kiosk in honor of the veterans. We have not had a kiosk out at the cemetery in the past. We have a very nice one down at Weimar that the Eagle Scouts did. And that meeting's going to be right here. The presentation itself is going to be at 4 o'clock. And what I wanted to do is invite all of you and your staff to feel free to stop by, because we're a small board, only 2 of us, myself and Fred, and and 1 staff member. So the more people that these Eagle Scouts have to present to, it's going to be the better their experience. And any feedback that you guys would have about their project would be most greatly appreciated. Thank you.
4 PM on the
4 p.m. on the
22nd.
22nd, just before, if you don't have a closed session, it won't be in conflict with your 6 o'clock meeting. So, and we'll get out of here before your closed session if you have one. Okay, so thank you.
Oh, Nancy? So with the Colfax Cemetery, is this something, because I know that it's the Eagle Scout, doing this presentation and that's what you're addressing, but do you want to be on our agency reports as a regular thing so that we can have them add you, or?
We regularly, what I'll do is in the future, if I have something to add, I'll call up and ask to be on the agenda.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't think very much, we don't have a whole lot to say, and our constituency doesn't have a whole lot to say.
Okay. Well, I also don't want your voice to go silent because you're not on here.
Yeah,
So I just
yeah.
want to make sure if this is something that you want to be
Right,
reporting
right.
on.
Yeah.
Because
so-
last month we had the Reefs of America. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we only have a couple of things regularly, and the VFW and the Veterans of Foreign War are involved in the veterans stuff that's going on. But anytime we have something special coming up, we would like to be on the agenda.
okay.
And in the future, in the hopefully near future, we're going to have to have some public hearings about an addition that's coming up to the properties. So that's going to be hopefully within this next year.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I can do it that way.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So up next, we have a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Lori Van Groningen, Finance Director for the city. It's hard to believe that a year's gone by and here we are doing financial statements again. I think we were the first presentation of the calendar year last year, and I think I joked at that time about how excited you must all be to have a financial presentation. There is a saying that accounting is boring until it isn't. Hence the need and benefit of having a financial statement audit. State law requires that the city's financial statements are audited annually by external auditors who are certified public accountants and independent of city functions. The city procures and contracts with CPA firms licensed by the state of California to perform, financial audits. In addition to the state law requirement, there are also benefits to the annual audit process. As fiduciaries of the city finances, you all as council members and staff are committed to providing complete and accurate financial information. The external audit provides assurance that the city financial statements are not misstated and that the reports are reliable. It highlights any weaknesses in the city practices and procedures which might affect the financial statements, and it ensures that all required information is disclosed. This is the 10th financial audit process that I've been involved with for the city. You might think it gets easier with time. Due to the many projects and increased activities that the city has had in recent years, the accounting structure and reporting has greatly increased in complexity, and I think this past fiscal year may have been the most challenging in the decade. With the drive of our accounting technician, Shanna Stahl, she's hiding in the back row in the middle, I'm giving her a shout out. We tackled the year-end accounting tasks and the production of the annual reports, and we survived very successfully a very thorough audit process. I want to thank Shanna for your hard work, not just during the audit, but all year. It made the whole process easier. The financial statements that are being presented tonight are a comprehensive financial report prepared in accordance with governmental accounting standards. In a perfect world, the information in the financial statements would be readily understandable to anyone who had interest in the information. Realistically, the purpose of the report is to provide information that will be understandable to someone with a reasonable understanding of government and public finance activities and of the fundamentals of governmental financial reporting. In other words, they are somewhat complex. At this time, I want to introduce Ingrid Scheiplein. Ingrid's a CPA, and she's the managing partner of Richardson and Company out of Sacramento. They provided the audit services to the city, and Ingrid's going to give a brief presentation of the report and report on some of the financial highlights. Ingrid?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'd like to direct you into your packet on page 4 is the outline, and I'm going to make reference to some of the tables that are in there if you want to have that handy. If you have questions as I'm saying something, please feel free to stop me and we can address any questions at that time. So on page 4, the first item just lists the various reports that were issued as a result of our audit, and those are included in your packet, and my goal is to discuss the highlights of those reports. Starting with the audited financial statements, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements that indicates that they are fairly presented in accordance with accounting principles required for governmental entities. Next, I'd like to point to the table. The first table that's there on page 4 discusses a summary of basically the governmental activities of the city, which comprise the general fund, special revenue funds, capital projects funds. You had revenues exceeding expenses during the year, or a net income of $1.6 million. The table that's illustrated there in the middle of that page shows basically the breakdown of how that affected your equity. Your first item, the investment in fixed assets, is basically your infrastructure. It's not spendable resources. You have restricted funds, which are revenues received for particular purposes of almost $1.4 million. Your unrestricted funds that you're seeing there are the funds that are set aside by the city's reserve policy, in particular for operating and capital purposes. You can see your reserves increased by $50,000 during the year, so you have $645,000 of reserves. And then the unrestricted are basically the amounts that are not earmarked for any particular purposes, but they're available for future use, and that totals almost $1.7 million. These numbers look very good compared to several years ago where the city had no reserves. I think overall the governmental activities function of the city is in good, strong financial condition. The fact that you have reserves available to carry forward for future use. These reports also show the budget versus actual comparison. That's on page 18. I'm not going to actually refer to that page, but if you did want to look at that, it shows a couple of items there. Your revenues were higher than your budget, mainly in the area of sales tax, and then also about $210,000 of developer fees came in that were not budgeted. So overall in your budget, you projected a deficit of about $100,000, meaning using some of your reserves. Where you ended the year was actually a surplus, where your revenues were higher than what you anticipated in the general fund of $790,000. Again, a good positive trend. The next section of this outline addresses the business activities, which in your case is the sewer enterprise fund. It had similar results with revenues exceeding expenses of $468,000. The table toward the bottom of that page shows the breakdown of the various reserves that the sewer fund has and how that income was distributed. Again, there's $10 million of your equity that's tied up in the infrastructure of the sewer facilities. You have $955,000 of restricted funds. Those are monies set aside for debt service reserves and other items required by your loan agreements. And then there were also some insurance proceeds that were received that were not spent at the end of the year. You also have a reserve policy for the sewer fund that sets aside $425,000 for operating capital purposes, and you can see that that reserve increased during the year by $100,000. And then you also have unrestricted resources, excuse me, available for future use in the sewer fund of close to 1.3 million. So again, good, strong results there. The only debt that the city has is within the sewer fund, and it's has a balance currently of 7.9 million, and that was a loan that was used, a state loan that was used for the sewer system upgrades. The city also has an unfunded pension liability of only $92,000. I'm saying only because that number is relatively low compared to what we see in most cities or in other special districts within the city. And I know that you are setting aside part of your reserves to help defray that liability, but that is a very minimal liability compared to what we see in the industry. On the second page of the outline, the internal control and compliance report. As part of our audit, we look at the internal controls and processes within the city to determine whether there is any errors where fraud or errors can occur. We concluded that the city has good internal controls in place, and so there's no weaknesses in internal controls discussed in that report. We also look at compliance with laws and regulations that are specific to the financial statements and noted there were no compliance issues there. So that was also a clean report. We also issued a governance or required communications letter that contains certain items we're required to disclose to you. A couple of items highlighted in that letter. I'm pleased to report that we had no adjustments or changes to the city's records as a result of our audit, and that is very unusual. Usually there's some errors or discrepancies that we find, but Lori does an excellent job of maintaining the books in accordance with the required accounting principles, and believe me, we look hard, and the fact that we were not able to find any adjustments or changes is definitely indicates her high level of skill and the conscientiousness of keeping the accounting records. That letter also mentions that we had no difficulties in performing the audit. If we did, we would need to bring those to your attention. We provide a very comprehensive list of documents that we need in advance of the audit. And Lori and Shana both provided all of that information in advance, uploaded it to our portal, so we had access to that information before we arrived on site. And so we appreciate that assistance with having those documents ready for us to be able to audit. That letter also indicates that there were no unusual accounting practices. If there were some gray areas or ways that the city was accounting for items that we felt was not appropriate, we would need to bring those to your attention, but there were no such items. Another document in your package is a management letter, and as I mentioned before, because we had no weaknesses in internal controls and determined the controls were good, we had no comments in the management letter. We do track those comments that we've had in previous years to ensure that they've been addressed, and any of the items that were in last year's letter we determined were adequately addressed and were removed from the letter. The last report is the appropriations limit report that's required by state law, and that report indicates that there were no exceptions that we noted in our audit of the city's appropriation limit calculation. So with that, the overall summary, if you have any questions specifically that I could address.
So I'm going to ask the same question I asked last year. Did we pass or did we fail?
You definitely passed. Passed with flying colors, actually.
And with that being said, does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Ingrid, for coming out and looking at this fiscal. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just wanted to say thank you, Shanna and Lori. You guys have done a great job again this year, and it's awesome to see such a good audit report come back. And can't say enough on how lucky we are to have you guys doing this for us. Thank you.
And I'm just going to echo that because that was my next thing to say. So echo what he said. Okay, where are we? 4B, Sierra Vista Community Center. Is that you, Connie? Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Connie Heileman on the board of the Community Center. Been on that board many, many years. And I just want to announce who our committee members were on the Bianchini board, and that's Nancy Hagman, Beth Miller, Foxy McClary, Jenny Wise, and Marnie Mendoza. And they met and they covered our insurance fees and some of the building improvements that we had listed on here, the building improvements that we try not to use our capital as much as we can. In fact, when we started this, we were starting with like 390,000 and we're now at 425, and we've used it for our insurance that we don't have enough money in our account to do, and some capital improvements that usually are health and safety, ADA type things. Although some people in our member would like to just spend more of the money, but we like to keep it there as much as we can. But I kind of wish we could finish up some of our projects, like the solar on our picnic area and stuff. But anyway, and I just so I think you've seen that report, and then our funds are up really good because I think because the economy is up really good. So we're up quite a bit in our funds, even though we've had those expenditures taken out of it that you see on the report. We're up to 425,000, which is more than we started with several years ago. So, and still used it for quite a few different little things.
You must have a good president.
What?
You must have a good president.
We do have a good president right now. Yes. Thank you, Kim. And then I put a little we have a little summary of the sewer joint agreement. And we want to thank you for helping us with the sewer, covering some of our sewer expenses. And but I want to announce to the public that we're looking for more people in the public to help us on committees, and because we are an all-volunteer organization and provide quite a bit of service for the community to have places to meet and have their meetings and try to have events. But we'd like to have some people in the community to put on some events, so we have more events in the community, and invite you to join us to help with that. And is there any questions anybody has on anything?
Oh, I just want to know, I didn't hear you say Otis's name. Is he still the treasurer?
He's the treasurer, but not on the Bianchini board.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was given a Bianchini board, yeah,
Okay.
report. Any other questions anybody has? Thank you very much, then.
Thank you, Connie. Sorry. Okay, next we're gonna hold a public hearing. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so we're gonna have a public hearing and a staff presentation. Public hearing for the first reading of the sewer ordinance 475, Appendage A, language clarification. Wes?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to provide a little background. We had some questions from some of the commercial accounts out there on the way that some of the calculations on how the sewer EDUs were done were conducted. So council appointed at the time Mayor Fatula and Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza an ad hoc committee to look at whether the methodology for assessing commercial services rates should be modified. The city procured Doug Dove with Bartle Wells and Associates to help with the assessment for the analysis on there. The committee conducted 2 meetings. As a result of the meetings and working with Doug Dove, we determined that the language cleanup in Appendix A was the most appropriate. Language cleanup does not trigger Prop 218 notice. Moving from there, and I'm going to let Doug get up and give a presentation on what the changes are to Appendix A for council to consider.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Doug Dove. I'm a consultant with Bartle Wells Associates, and our firm specializes in helping communities fund water and wastewater facilities and develop rates and charges for those facilities. And we understand you had a wastewater rate study about 2 years ago, and that implemented about a 5-year rate step phase-in. And so there had been some complaints about some of the assigned charges, particularly for commercial mixed-use type properties. And so we met with the Sewer Ad Hoc Committee twice in the past couple of months, and we've come up with some changes to the basic Appendix A is what it's called, is how the charges are allocated. And so I'd just like to briefly summarize our recommendations and open it up for questions. So next slide, please. So each customer is assigned a sewer charge, and the basic charge is one single-family home. That's kind of the lowest common denominator of the sewer rate club. If you have a connection, you have a minimum of one EDU, equivalent dwelling unit. For commercial businesses, the flow and the loadings that are discharged into the system are estimated and converted into these billing units of equivalent dwelling units, or EDUs. And you have an Appendix A in your code, which sets forth the various factors for different uses: single-family, multifamily, restaurants, bakeries, and so forth. There's quite a number. It's 3 pages long. And so we zeroed in on this Appendix A and found that the overall rate study and rate structure were fine, but some clarification was needed in this Appendix A, which you've had on the books for about 18 years, I believe, just so that there wouldn't be any ambiguity and it would be a little more fair to these mixed-use commercial customers. So our basic recommendations, you should have a minimum of one equivalent dwelling unit for any account or connection or parcel, unless otherwise noted in that Appendix A. And that is just a minimum charge level. There's a lot of costs in your wastewater system that's fixed. It doesn't vary based on how much flow goes down the drain. There are some costs, maybe let's say 30% of the costs, roughly maybe based on how much flow is put in. But a lot of the costs, like the debt payments on the wastewater treatment system and the plant upgrade, that's all fixed. And so it doesn't really vary with how much people put down the drain. So we work with a lot of communities across the state, and the rule is one equivalent dwelling is the basic membership level for the wastewater system. That is the basic lowest billing amount. So we recommend a minimum of one EDU per account, period. Now, if you have a multi-use parcel, you may have a dwelling, you may have a store, an office, various different uses. And so Appendix A recommends how to apply the equivalent dwelling unit ratings to those uses. And so clearly, we believe the ancillary uses, so if the main use of the parcel is a restaurant, but you also have a store attached to it, the primary use would be the restaurant, but the ancillary use would be the store. So the store is not subject to another minimum charge. So there's one minimum, and then after that, you follow the rules of Appendix A, which is pretty much based on square footage and type of business. The minimum equivalent dwelling unit should include the first 1,000 square foot of the business, unless otherwise noted in Appendix A. And one kind of modification, you have a category called granny unit, and now the more modern term is accessory dwelling unit. And these are very popular. People are building them. The state's encouraging that to provide more low-cost housing and cost-effective housing. So we're recommending that you change that granny house to accessory dwelling unit. And the EDU assignment should be based on the square footage of the accessory dwelling unit, and that's based on recent state law that's been passed. So it has to be based on a proportional share of either square footage or plumbing fixture units. So we're just recommending a conversion of that to square footage. And then your current rate study will, the 5-year phase-in will end in a couple of years. And so we're recommending at the next rate study that you do an in-depth look at your costs and your flows. And since you don't provide the potable water service here, you'd have to get the records from Placer County Water Agency. So at that point, do an in-depth look at the flows and the loadings and update the whole EDU schedule. Next slide. So this is a summary of your city's equivalent dwelling units. You've got about 1,204, and largely residential. You've got about 259, 260 commercial equivalent dwelling units, and roughly 832 residential dwelling units. So largely residential with a significant commercial sector as well. Mostly small commercial. We don't have any very large industrial users. Next slide. Thanks. So just a look at your rates to put them in context. This is a regional survey, and your rates are the highest in the immediate region, and that's due to having to upgrade your treatment plant recently. And, that's all caused by the state requiring you to do a lot of upgrades to your treatment plant. Placerville is the next highest, and they did a treatment plant upgrade in early 2000. And these other cities, when they have to do their upgrades, they're going to see their rates go up significantly as well. So rates are high compared to the surrounding region. There's very good reason for that with the new plant, and you really had no choice. Next slide. So this is just a little snapshot of the Appendix A, and we went through and recommended some clarifications, and that was in your packet. Next slide. So this is an example of a mixed use, and under the proposed Appendix A clarifications, this, which includes general office, retail stores, multifamily, a bar, and a small restaurant, would be rated at 5.3 equivalent dwelling units. Now, under the prior methodology that was used, that would have been rated 9.3. And that's because there would be additional minimum charges applied to all of those ancillary uses, the ones below the office. So we believe this is more equitable, more fair, based on our experience. And next slide. Another mixed-use example with a bakery, an office, beauty salon, medical office, and a full-service restaurant. And this one, under the new clarifications, would be rated 6 equivalent dwelling units. Under the old, it would have been rated 11. So we're seeing a little bit of lower ratings under the clarified Appendix A. And so we estimate there would be 20 to 30 equivalent dwelling units lost as a result of this clarification. We don't believe that's going to impact your financial solvency on the wastewater enterprise. You've had some growth that was above what the rate study projected, so we think you've got the margin to have a bit of a reduction in these ratings. Next slide. So this is just an example of an ADU. A single-family residence has a rating of 1 equivalent dwelling unit, and then the ADU, it's 0.8 EDUs per 1,000 square foot. So in this example, a 500 square foot ADU would be rated 0.4. So the total rating would be 1.4 EDUs. Now, these ratings apply for the connection fees when new customers connect to your system, and then they apply for the annual charges, your monthly charges. So this one currently, if we went with the current Appendix A, that would be 1 single-family home and a granny unit, which would be rated at 0.8. So this is rated at 1.4 rather than 1.8. So it's a little bit less. So the proposed changes we think will result in a little bit of a reduction in EDUs. Folks can voluntarily apply for a re-rating. You'll keep your EDU rating unless you apply to have a re-rating. If you apply for a re-rating, you may reduce your EDUs, or the EDUs may increase based on the clarified document. So if you do see a reduction in your EDUs, your charge would be reduced, but you would also lose that capacity. In other words, if you're currently rated 11 EDUs, but then you re-rate to 6, you're going to get 6 going forward. You're going to pay for 6, and if you ever increase your business size or add onto it, you're going to have to pay from 6 on. So most of the customers are single-family or multifamily, and so those are not even affected by this clarification. This pretty much specifically applies to accessory dwelling units and commercial multi-use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, can I accept public? Yeah, I'd like to open this up to the public comment at this point. Wait,
Open the public hearing.
I'm okay, I don't have to do it.
Have at least one.
So, I don't know who raised their hand, but please come up to the podium.
Questions, comments?
Connie, did you want to come up and speak? Yeah, and we have the new camera system, which I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting. I apologize for that, but we are streaming live.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that 133 EU is 1 month, right? So it's double, we get billed twice for every 2 months.
Yes, you're billed every other month,
Yeah.
and every other month, you're billed for 2 months.
Yeah, so,
And it is 133.05 per month per EDU.
okay, I just want to clarify that. I think I pretty much decided that.
Do I have any other public comment? This has been a hot item. I thought more people would be in here to, okay, so,
These are administrative changes. They do not change the rates at all.
I understand that, it's just, anyway. Okay, with that being said, do I close? I'm gonna close public comment, and I'm gonna look to my colleagues. Does anybody have any concerns, questions, comments? Joe?
Yeah, So, just so everybody understands, what we were trying to do was fix some of the language on how staff interprets the words that are in the ordinance. And that's why we added things in there like the example sheet that says, here's an example of how you apply the rates to that. I guess we have a little high volume on this.
Thank you, Chris.
So fundamentally, nothing really changes except how it's applied, how it's interpreted. I guess that one's on.
Sorry, all, they're brand new mics, so
Yeah.
it looks like we're getting a little feedback.
They work really good.
Yep. So like for, one of the examples that came up was a question of like the barber shop up there, which has, I think this is just gonna ring.
Feedback's turned up too much on that.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hang on, everybody, while we check the sound system. Whoop, now it's off. Oh, down. Okay, so one of the questions came up, like in the barber shop that's over by the Brick Oven Pizza place. They were being charged about 1 EDU, and it's basically for a sink and a toilet with no hair washing or anything else. So that's equivalent to a whole house, and we just said it didn't make sense. So when we looked at it, by going through just the language that's in there, it says, is it being applied correctly or is it being applied incorrectly? We determined that this example approach that we use, how you calculate it out that you showed in your one slide there, just clarifies the whole thing and makes it very easy to handle. So in that case, he's part of a larger building. It's one connection for the whole building. So he has that base charge that everybody has. And then each individual business has a small adder, not a base charge for every individual business that's in there, because there's still only one connection, right? So it just clarified a couple of things like that. And they were stickler cases with a number of people in the community, both homes that had an accessory unit attached to them, as well as businesses that had a small business attached to it. So this, I think, clears up the language. It looks pretty reasonable. Marnie and I did a couple sanity checks looking at it. It says, yep, that looks like it's fair both ways. And that's kind of where we're at.
Any other comments?
So Wes, if someone would like to apply for a re-rating, what process would they need to go through to do so?
So they just need to contact the city hall. It can be done by email, come in person, and ask for the rating change. But I want to specifically point out that if you ask to be re-evaluated, at the end of the evaluation, whether the rate goes up or down, that's the new rate that's going to be applied.
So that's clarified.
With the clarification and the examples in here, a person should almost be able to take what's in the appendix, calculate it out for themselves, and say, do I save money by doing that or not? And you can answer the question before you come in and use that to make your decision, right? It's because we want to make this as easy as ever. That's why we have the examples. Follow the example for the particular case you have, and you should be able to get a pretty good answer on it without having to worry about too much risk. Right?
Okay, any other council comments? Kim Douglas? No? You're good? Okay.
I would just like to make a quick recommendation to the public that if you do not understand the amendments and you do not understand how to calculate your sewer bill before you come in and make that request, please ask for clarification before requesting a voluntary rate analysis.
So the action staff is looking for is to introduce the proposed ordinance by title only, waive the first reading, and schedule it for adoption on January 22nd.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the first reading and schedule the proposed ordinance for adoption on the January 22nd regular meeting.
Can I get a vote?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I get a name call on this one, right?
Roll call.
No, you can do it all those.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
carries.
Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to call for a break. 10-minute break. Is that okay? 10 minutes? Good? Okay. Okay, next item is the consent calendar. Do I have any requests?
I'd like to pull item 6G for discussion and a correction.
6 item to be pulled. 6G, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent calendar with the exception of 6G.
Second.
Can I get a roll call? Oh, all those in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion, opposed? Motion passes. 6G. We look at 6G now?
Yes, you do.
SCI Consulting Group contract for commercial cannabis ordinance and fee development. This item's back on the agenda again because with the changes in state laws, we needed to make some changes to our ordinance to fall in line with those laws. So we've invited SCI back to help us rewrite our ordinance and make the necessary changes. Also on the item here, on the last sentence, we need to make a correction to the amount not to exceed $25,000 as opposed to 25. The goal with this and this amount is to have the city at a net zero. So we've worked out an agreement with, or working on an agreement with our current licensed business to help cover the costs for the rewriting of the ordinance. I just wanted to bring that out, and I have no other comments.
Does anybody else have any comments?
Part of the discussion we had in there is any costs that we incur to modify the ordinance, update the ordinance, or anything that's either required or we choose to do, gets folded back into the license fee, so it becomes a net zero cost for the city. It doesn't matter whether it's one license or more than one license, whatever it is, all this folds back into the license fee. So just FYI.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve 6G with, are we making changes? We're not making changes.
The resolution is correct. There was a typo on the agenda title page in there, so.
I see it now.
Shouldn't need to be, defer to make a change to the resolution.
Okay.
The resolution is fine, just need a motion to approve that.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve 6G?
Motion to approve?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Did we get a full vote? Okay. Motion passes. Okay, number 7, public comment. The purpose of this is for, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The meeting is being live streamed, and we request that you speak clearly into the microphone.
Foxy McClary, 127 Sanders Lane. I want to remind anybody that's interested in getting their portrait that I did for the chocolate and wine, the portraits are all on display in the library. I'm going to be taking them down tomorrow and bringing them over to the Sierra Vista. There's maybe 20 left. It's a $20 donation to the Sierra Vista to get your portrait. You can't find a cheaper portrait if you want them than that. Also, the VFW is having their breakfast this coming Sunday from 8 to 11. Also, the art group is meeting every Tuesday and Wednesday from 1 to 4 at the Sierra Vista on the upper level near the ball field. Please, artists, we do help each other out. Do come. It's only $5 for 2 days to keep the lights on, and we can help a lot of other artists out. And the Legion is having their dinner on the 3rd Thursday of the month at 5:30. So please support those events. Thank you.
Thank you, Foxy.
Good evening, Council. I'm Will Stockland, 525 Pine Street in Colfax. Over the last few weeks, I've noticed that an old problem is starting to reoccur up at the cliff houses on Sunrise. People are parking in the striped no parking area. And I bring this up because about a week ago, coming down the hill, I noticed 3 little kids walking around illegally parked cars in the street. If a kid gets hit up there because people are illegally parked, the city is going to take a huge hit in a lawsuit. So I would encourage you to discuss this problem with the sheriff's office. And maybe we could pay a little bit more attention to this problem because it keeps coming up. The faces up there change, and they figure they can just park anywhere, even though the whole area is striped no parking. So it's coming back. Please keep an eye on that. Thank you.
There you go, typing it up.
You, Ty.
Thank you. Just have Barker bring his ticket book when he takes the kids to school. He can just drive right by and drop them off.
Mayor, City Council, Jim Dion, 233 Highway 174. I'm a little confused. I understand we just hired the company. Do you know a timeline of how long it's going to take before I can go to the gardeners?
I didn't hear that last part.
I want to know a timeline of when I might possibly get my micro business license so that I can go directly to the gardeners.
It's going to take a few months. We need to have the consultant modify the ordinance. We need to have some workshops on it. It's got to be adopted by council. It has to have 2 readings to it. Then it's got, I believe, a 30-day cooling period on the back end of it. So realistically, probably not before end of June or July for this.
Well, we might as well wait till the election then, huh, and let the people decide. Is that what's coming next? So 6 months down the road, perhaps?
Well,
that's all right.
Well, we have
I didn't
a
expect any
consultant guy
more.
here, don't we? Or did he leave?
He just left.
Okay, he just left.
We're gonna keep this on the top of the agenda. We're gonna work with SCI to make these changes
And
as soon as I
expedite.
can. And we understand the timetable that you're under and the time crunch you're under. So we'll do everything we can to expedite the process. We're not gonna let it drag on like it did just getting you your business license. I can tell you that.
You got to understand my frustration.
Definitely. Definitely.
7 years I've been coming here. I missed the last meeting. I'm sorry, Maureen. I wanted to be here for your inauguration.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, item 8 is council and staff reports. Council and staff, Joe, if you could please start. We will work our way through the council and then to the city manager.
I went to an OES meeting back 2.5 weeks ago, right? Which was a very good kind of prep for a bunch of things that are coming up related to emergency services. And we've got another one coming up in about a week, maybe 2 weeks. So that's the key item. So just trying to address the infrastructure failures that we've seen for communications, for network, for power, and for services.
See, on the December 16th, I'm on a subcommittee at SACOG called Policy and Innovation. And with the District 1 Supervisor, Bonnie Gore, and I, we went to McClintock's office. He's our federal representative in Washington, D.C. for District 1. And
Who?
the one of the, Tom McClintock,
For which district?
District 1 in Washington, D.C.
McClintock is 4, Lamoff is 1.
Let's see, yeah, you're right, McClintock is 4. Bonnie Gore's in District 1. Yeah. And our purpose there was to try to join forces and get some support for road funds. And in the past, McClintock didn't really like to get involved at a local level. But he is changing his attitude, and he's willing to now get on board and help us promote ways that we can raise revenue for road revenue. So that's a plus. Let's see, then on the 18th, Sierra Vista meeting, I think I mentioned that. And then on the 19th, the main board meeting for SACOG, where we have a $62 million budget, and there's a new development going close to our city manager's place in Lincoln. I think 5,000 new homes are planned, which sounds good, but the not so good thing about it is any money that might trickle up here to Colfax is going to be siphoned off by more lanes of Route 65 being added. So that's not good news for us up here upstream. And then on the January 2nd, Pioneer Energy, which we have almost 90% of the market, and our rates are about 11% lower than PG&E. We just got a mandate that 7% of all of our energy now must be created by biomass, not solar, not hydro, not wind, but biomass. And that's, the one good thing about that is it means that we're going to have to use a lot of batteries. So when the power goes out, we're going to be using batteries, which is more expensive, but I personally love the idea of having battery backup. And so,
What do batteries have to do with biomass?
well, that's another subset where they want us to have batteries and get away from generators. So, let's see. And then, didn't pass in the state Senate, but the governor, as you know, wants to build over 3 million housing units over the next 6 years. And so he's got the right attitude of building homes, although the legislation hasn't been passed yet to actually implement that, even though there is over $20 billion in the state surplus. So the money's there, but right now it's just not being used, it's just sitting there. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So none of my regular boards actually met between our last meeting and now. But I did attend a meeting at the Public Utilities Commission in San Francisco with PG&E, SoCal Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And one of the things that we talked about during that meeting was what types of changes we needed to make to the tariffs, basically the rules for interconnection to the grid, as a result of these public safety power shutoff events. One of the things that came up during that meeting was something called queue jumping. So currently, the way it works now, when you put in an application to interconnect something with the grid, you get put into a queue, into a list, and your project is then studied accordingly in order based on that list. And not only is the order you come online determined by that, but also the order in which cost responsibility is determined. So one of the things that was discussed was the potential to almost create a parallel queue for essential services, where things like hospitals or cities, fire departments, things like that would be moved over to the parallel queue and expedited. The problem with this that came up during the meeting is that it does push other things down in the queue without discretion, and that may include low-income housing or people who are elderly who are trying to interconnect a battery system per se for their facility. So it's a tricky subject. We're going to talk about it quite a bit more before anything happens with it, but I thought it was worth noting that this is something that's up for discussion right now.
None of my committees met except for the Fire Safe Council. We didn't have any reportable action, just kind of ran over the last year's business. Working closely with RCD on making sure we're getting the word out about free dumpsters for yard waste. We're actually bringing out large dumpsters for people to put yard waste in still. And we've also done some more updates to the website for the Placer Sierra Fire Safe Council, and it can be accessed through the Placer County website on one of the drop-down menus. Other than that, that's all I had.
Thank you, and I have nothing to report, so I'm going to turn it over to Wes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to put council on notice that as we finish up the roundabout project and we realize how much savings we have in there, I'd like for council to consider putting together a working group, look at doing the monument design center of the roundabout. Ken Teichman with Solus Graphics that helped us with our branding has done some kind of conceptual looks and stuff like that. I'd like to put together about 3 conceptual designs, work with the group that the council puts together, then bring those designs back to council for consideration. But initially, we need to figure out how much funding we have available to even put something together. So that probably won't be until probably the middle of February. That'll happen. Just wanted council to know that it's still on the process and moving forward and the things to do. Staff.
So is that something that we do now, or are we going to come back to this?
I'll bring it forward formally and the council can do it. I think the working group that was put together for the branding worked really well. Get some of the community partners involved in it, and maybe even some of the students from the school involved in it as well too would be a good thing.
That is a good thing, and I would like to be included on these.
And Wes, I was gonna say, we had discussed previously the overpass on the freeway, potentially doing something with that. I think it might be good to include that in that conversation. It might not necessarily be the same funding method, but design-wise, it'd be nice to see some uniformity between the two.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a workshop next Wednesday on the 15th at 9 a.m. to go over the council goals and objectives and set those, and then formally adopt them hopefully in the subsequent meeting. We were hoping to get the vegetation ordinance on there. It looks like we had some schedule conflicts for the chief as well, so we may not, I don't think that's gonna happen on that same agenda. We may have to have a separate meeting date for the vegetation ordinance. Worst case, we may be pushing this out another few weeks. Make sure that we have all our agency partners involved in this discussion. Lastly, the I-80.
I think you need to encourage them to get it in sooner, not later, because that's, the vegetation ordinance affects life safety, especially as we get into fire season next year.
I agree. Some of the challenge is during the holiday season when I sent it out, I failed to give it to Brian in a timely manner, and I realized afterwards I didn't send it to him. So he's only had it for a couple of days. Yes, it is definitely high on our priority, and we'll keep reporting on where we're at on it. So even if we can't do it next Wednesday, there may be a Tuesday or something that we do a workshop on it. And I want to give council enough advance notice so those of you that have employment can arrange for that time to be off as well too. Consider.
Today? So that we have a target date?
We can go back and look at the calendars and see if we can get everybody to line up, because it'll be a little difficult here today, but we'll circulate something by early next week.
And that was for the vegetation.
Last item I want to report on is the I-80 acceleration lane project will begin sometime in the spring. Project is funded. Caltrans District 3 wants to do a combined ribbon cutting / groundbreaking. So they want to do the groundbreaking for the acceleration lane, and at the same event do the ribbon cutting for the roundabout in there. So that's scheduled to happen sometime in March. So again, just for the audience to know, that's another $1 million that the Caltrans has put back into this community to improve mobility for not just this community, but the region, and ultimately will have an economic impact for this community, a positive one in the back end of it. This is all happened because of the early discussion of the roundabout and the funding and the needs and the deficiencies that were identified in Caltrans stepping up and coming up with additional funding. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. So moving on to item 9, council business.
Madam Mayor, Larry Wing is going to give a brief staff report on this, council.
Mayor and council members, I'm Larry Wing, the city engineer. This item requests that the city council split a roundabout fee for the Best Western Hotel into 2 equal payments. We calculated their fair share fee for the roundabout cost to be $32,584, and the request is to split it into 2 payments, each of $16,292. One would be due at the time that the building permit is issued, and one would be due at the time that certificate of occupancy is issued. Our fee was based on traffic projections of the project that would be using the roundabout. We use information from the traffic impact analysis that was used for the project in the environmental impact report. And we did this process similar to the calculation of the roundabout fee that we did for the Maidu Village reimbursement fee. The proposed fee was presented to the developer on December 5th, and he requested on December 13th that we split the fees, and that's why this item is before you, and staff is recommending approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you'd like.
Do I have any questions or comments from the council? Oh, do I open up to the public? Do I have any questions from the public? Seeing none. Joe, do you have any comments, remarks? Kim? Everybody's good?
Not at all.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve item 9A.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, for the next item, City Manager Heathcock will provide information. Bus?
So on this item here, it's kind of the precursor to 9C, which is committee report or committee assignments. On this particular, we had a couple of developments request negotiations on some of the mitigation fees. Staff does not have the authority to do so. That is the authority of council. Historically, what has happened is that staff has come forward to council and asked council to appoint 2 council members to an ad hoc committee to negotiate fees and then bring the final results back to council for consideration. So staff is asking council to discuss among yourself who would like to be on this committee, and then make appointments.
Okay. Does the council have any discussion? I would like to sit at this committee, so I don't know what you guys have to think about that. Any discussion, Kim?
Three's a quorum. Yeah.
Okay, so can I get a motion?
And I are the 2 ad hoc members to deal with this assignment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the next item is 9C. Is that right? 9C. 9C has exclamation, I can't even say it. Examples of what your duties are in these committees. And do we have any public comment? Seeing none, I want to look to my council to see, does anybody have any remarks? Is everybody okay? Yes, Kim Douglas.
I have kids at both the schools.
Double reason.
This one. Okay, and Trini, do you want to accept that? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, Joe, do you have any discussion? You're good with what you have in front of you?
If anybody needs to swap a position out, I'm willing to swap, but I'm okay where it is.
Yes.
I had one more question concerning Joe. You were the alternate. Are you happy being the alternate for the Placer County Economic Development Board?
Especially this year.
Are you gonna show up?
Alternate for what?
Placer County Economic Development.
The first
not
one
what I
that's
see.
not what I'm reading.
That's based on last year.
You have next year. You gotta get it right.
This year it's Marnie.
So the blue is the 2019, the green is the 2020. Okay,
You happy doing that, Marnie?
I am very happy doing that, and you and I can ride together and share costs. How about that? I'm just kidding. Anyway, any other discussions?
Well, you're still good with being on the mosquito and vector control board, right? You're still good with being on the mosquito and vector control board for us? Yes. All right, great, thank you.
And you're good on the schools? Okay. Trinity, you're okay with the Pioneer Community Energy?
Yes.
Okay. Joe, you still want to stay on the Fire Safe Council? Joe, you're okay with being on the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency as the alternative? Kim Douglas, you still want to stay with SAGOG, right?
Unless somebody wants to usurp my position.
I don't think anybody does.
I think you're doing
I
a
was
great
looking
job,
for
Kim.
usurpers.
Trinity, are you okay with being the alternate there, or do you want that to go to somebody else?
I'm okay with being the alternate there.
Okay. WACMAC, we've got Sean and Joe. Are you both okay with doing those community meetings? Yep. Okay. Anyone from the back? We're good?
Okay, I'd make a
So
motion.
everybody's okay with what you have in front of you?
Yes.
A motion to approve the assignments with the one change that was made with the high school for Trinity.
Yeah. Trinity in the high school.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Committees are set. We're on item 10, good of the order. Joe, do you have anything for the good of the order of Colfax?
Yeah, I had one item that came up with, a number of people have sent me emails about the Colfax net connection, and I just wanted to stay again for the record, because I have a financial interest in them, because they rent my closet in my building from them. I can't participate in that, I have to recuse myself, so just, people wonder why I'm not involved in that piece. It's California law, so, sorry.
Kim?
Probably bring this up at the workshop, but I'd like the brochure that Paradise produced that they gave to all the citizens evacuation plan. But we can talk about that at the workshop.
And you'll bring that, please? Anything that you have on public safety, yeah? Thank you. Anything else? Kim? Good? Trinity? Sean?
Just two things. Will, I saw the draft of the Colfax Connections. Thank you, looks great. Say that. And Tuesday, January 21st, we're gonna be having another drug-free community grant meeting. It'll be at 5 PM at the Colfax Pizza Factory. At this meeting, since it seemed like at the last meeting we had a lot of community interest, we'll be putting a committee together to start the process for securing those federal funds to start targeting our youth and getting the message out there about drug use.
Can you let them know who our collaborating partners are?
Maybe. Put me on the spot here. So we're working with the Placer County Office of Education, Placer County Sheriff, and the high school and elementary school, so the Colfax Elementary School District, or the Colfax Elementary School District and Placer Union High School District.
And then the funding, what does the funding look like?
So the funding is federal grant funding, and we could secure up to $150,000 for community awareness projects and helping get awareness out to businesses and things like that, and enforcement and patrol.
So I'm just gonna piggyback with him, because Sean and I are kind of doing this. So it's $5 million over a 5-year course at $125,000 a year. And what this fund is from it's from the SAMHSA grant. And then SAMHSA will be allocating it to Placer County Office of Education, and then that'll come into Colfax. Okay.
That's all I have.
Not to take away your glory.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, so I do have a request. Was I supposed to do it today? Or, yeah, okay. So you guys all know that, like, public safety is my thing, and yeah, I just really want to get this place secured, especially with everything that's happening overseas. We all need to be prepared. But anyway, last year I went to Washington, D.C. and did a lot of advocacy with different Congress people, with a team out of Sacramento, cap to cap. There's about 28 of us on the public safety team. There's a continuance of that, and so I need to have this put on at some future date so that I can either get my colleagues' support or not to go and continue our advocacy for Colfax, and advocacy meaning funding. And that's all I got. Oh, and I guess that means that we're adjourned. Thank you.